This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
So how much will you spend per month in retirement? Apparently, the new average is about $5,300 a month, or if you put that annually, it's $63,000. So how much of that really comes from Social Security, and then if you're lucky enough to have one, a pension? So that is the starting point here. It seems pretty simple, but it's probably not that simple, right, Mark?
No, nothing in life is that simple, but absolutely, at its core, it's not rocket science. I mean, we have to look at what sources of income do people have and what are their needs. I find that on average, people are looking in Vegas at least at spending $6,000 to $7,000 a month, so a little higher than that national average that you mentioned. But I've got people who tell me if they have less than $15,000 a month, they're not comfortable, and some people tell me they can get by on $2,000 or $3,000, which I have a little bit of a hard time comprehending in today's world. But again, everyone is different, and that's really what it boils down to. So we've got to compare, what sources of income do you have? Because retirement's not about assets; it's about income. And so, if you have assets, we got to look at ways of converting those. So, for example, if there's home equity, or is that on the table? Is that part of the consideration? That's where the majority of most middle-income Americans' wealth is. But we got to look at Social Security, we got to look at pensions, and then we've got to identify: is there a gap? Do you have $3,000 or $4,000 of guaranteed income, but you need $7,000? Where are we going to fill that $4,000 difference from? And so that's a conversation people need to be having: is income, and where's guaranteed income, and how do we factor inflation, for example, into that? So there are a number of considerations. It's not rocket science, but it really helps when you have people like my team members and I who have spent, decades doing this. We've got a perspective from talking to thousands of families that really benefits those who come in and visit with us.
Absolutely. And something else to point out here is, we talked about this before, a lot of retirees, they usually can underestimate their spending for things like travel and hobbies and things like that. But also, remember, guys, every day is kind of like Saturday. You have no alarm, you have no agenda, and you're walking around the house, you're doing the laundry, and you go, you know what, I should just go to whatever store and walk around. And all of a sudden you're walking around, you walk out $200 later. So it's really easy to start swiping that debit card or even that credit card just to kind of fill the time or fill the void. Or maybe you have an expensive hobby, like a lot of folks getting into golf. I mean, that is expensive. So you have to be able to have that income to support those hobbies. And these are all conversations, again, that you'll have with Mark one-on-one. Mark, tell me this real quick. I find that a lot of people, when you talk about retirement, the main concern is obviously, can I pay the bills? Pay my car note, pay the mortgage, because we all know when that 9 to 5 stops, that paycheck stops, but those everyday bills and utilities don't. So being able to make sure that we've checked those boxes at the time, people forget to do the fun stuff, like the golf, like the shopping with your friends, like the trips. I mean, how often do you have to sit down with folks and go, okay, we've done the serious money buckets, let's do the fun bucket. And I'm telling you, you're okay to take that Alaskan cruise or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah, that definitely has to be part of it, because it's really about quality of life. I mean, at the end of the day, why did we work all of those years if we're not going to be able to enjoy it? And the crazy thing is that many people who have been very good savers have a very, very hard time actually spending money on themselves in retirement. I mean, I know this is the case with me. We've talked a lot on the show about my trike and how I enjoy that, but it was absolutely traumatic for me to go out and make that purchase because I just hadn't spent money on myself before. And a lot of people who've been good savers do struggle with that. And so sometimes we find ourselves giving them, helping them give themselves permission to spend their own money, or we're creating some kind of, structured income stream for them so that they know the money's coming in and they might as well spend it because it's coming in, kind of thing. But we have to do a reality check, because the flip side is a lot of people come in and they literally don't know what their expenses are on a monthly basis. We ask them to complete a budget sheet if they haven't prior to meeting with us, and many people don't do it, and we have this conversation and they tell me, here are my expenses, and they start listing their mortgage, kind of thing, as if I want to hear each of their daily details. But I say this not to be rude or anything, but just because they usually only mention 4 or 5 things. Yeah. So I'm always saying, well, what about groceries? What about insurance? What about? And so this really is an important thing, because people need to know what are our living expenses, and then on top of that, what are the quality of life things we want, and perhaps even luxuries above that. People have to engage with this. Otherwise, by default, they end up in a situation they didn't want to be in, and they're constrained. they don't have as much money to do the things they want to do, and so we're really just focusing on giving them some basic dignity. One other thing to really point out is the two big expenses in retirement, health care and housing. And housing is pretty easily quantifiable, but health care is not. There's a lot of unpredictables that can happen there, particularly with long-term care. And so if people haven't added that into their plans, then they're woefully unprepared, in my opinion, because long-term care is the big time bomb that blows up people's retirement plans. Who's going to help us when that day comes, because of accident or illness or injury or whatever, just frailty from age, when we need help dressing and eating and bathing and toileting, all these kind of things that no one wants to talk about, but become real issues as we get older. Where's that going to take place? Who's going to deliver the care? So there really are a lot of issues here that people need to address. We can help them with that. We've got decades of experience.
And you can sit down with Mark one-on-one to discuss all these different topics here. As you said, the biggest expenses in retirement, healthcare, housing, of course, making sure you don't run out of money. That's on there as well. You can do that when you sit down with Mark one-on-one today for this retirement roadmap. When you put this together, folks, it's going to show you not only how you're going to get to retirement, but how you're going to get through retirement, right through those golden years and not have to worry about running out of money. If you are 55 and over, if you have at least $250,000 saved, then give Mark a call today. Let's put together this retirement roadmap for you. Again, that phone number, 702-996-4050, 702-996-4050. The website, mygoldenyearsroadmap.com. The 401k, when you look back, really took off in the 80s. Congress created it as a way to defer taxes on certain income, not as a primary retirement plan. But for many Americans, let's be honest, that's exactly what it's become. So, is the 401k essentially dead? Yahoo Finance asked Charles Payne with Fox Business.
I don't know that it's dead. I will say, though, that the 401k hasn't lived up to the hype. And I think that's one of the problems, right? And every year they come out and they'll say we have this many 401k millionaires, right? And it sounds like a huge number. That's cool. Then you say, well, how many people have a 401k? And it's like 0.03% of everyone with one. So the promise was that if you just put this money in, it was going to end up being worth a lot of money. And I don't know that it's dead, but I think people have to approach it differently. And I think they're starting to, particularly like the 60-40 portfolio. I think that's a huge mistake. On the 40 side, 40% in bonds, I think is just a massive mistake at this point.
All right, it's an interesting point of view there. I mean, Mark, what about you? What do you see? Do you see the 401k getting a revamp? And are there changes that we should be making to our 401ks?
Well, they just have revamped it here recently. In the last year or so, they added in new product offerings. I mean, annuities are now available in 401k plans, not in most plans, but, what Congress allows and what the plan providers are actually doing are two different things. My biggest observation is that employers are not updating their plans appropriately. Man, I literally had a relative just this weekend. I got an email on Saturday saying that he wasn't able to do certain things, and it turns out he needs to be able to borrow some money from his 401k to make a great move, but his 401k plan doesn't allow any loan provisions. Well, that's just ridiculous in my mind that the employer hasn't updated the plan. I often find that when I meet with people, they don't know what the features are in their 401k plan, or the employer hasn't updated the plan. So I don't think 401ks are bad. I think what's bad is this naive assumption that they are supposed to be the only thing that we use to prepare for retirement. Because when they were originally developed in 1974, it was most everyone had pensions back then, and these were developed as a supplemental savings program that happened to have tax deferral with it. You get this tax break. And what happened was employers increasingly realized they couldn't afford to pay the pensions that they had promised because people were living longer. And so of necessity, employers were pushing people off of the pension plans. They were discontinuing pension plans and emphasizing the 401k and often providing a match. But many people aren't even taking the free money allowed through the employer match. So I would encourage people to really look at your 401k. It should not be the be-all and end-all, as it were, to your retirement plan, but it's wonderful in that it's an automated way of saving. You can get tax advantages. Many people ought to be contributing to a Roth channel within their 401k, but they often don't even know if it's available because they haven't asked that question. So I'd encourage our listeners to look into those kind of features. And, if you want help with it, of course, come visit with us. We can absolutely help you with that. Most people should be saving far more than they are, and we can help you put a perspective on that. The reason that 401ks haven't performed, as this gentleman said, in my opinion, it's not just because, there are inherent weaknesses in 401k plans. That's not the biggest issue. In my opinion, the biggest issue is that people just haven't taken it seriously enough, because if we start in our younger years and we allow time to compound, it's just like a snowball. The further it rolls, the more it plumps up, it compounds, and people aren't taking advantage of compound interest. Most are scrambling in the decade prior to retirement to make up for many years of not having prepared. And so the sooner we prepare, the better. Come visit with us if you need help and you need perspective on these things. If people don't feel like they're prepared, come to our classes. We do a class down at the College of Southern Nevada. It's a 6-hour commitment. It's 2 3-hour sessions. And so, for example, on Thursday night, June 18th, from 6 to 9, we're doing our class number 1. And then the following Thursday night, on the 25th, we're doing class number 2 of that 6-hour series. We're doing the same thing on Saturday morning, June 20th, from 9 to 12. And then again on Saturday, June 27th. There's no cost to these classes, but they're incredibly helpful for people who need the education, need to know what they don't know to prepare. Again, no cost, so call our office. We can get you scheduled. You can go to our website, and you could just schedule there on the website if you'd like and attend those classes. We provide a number of resource materials, free books, and things like that. So wonderful, wonderful opportunity for people to learn.
100%. You got to invest in your retirement, in that income plan, if in return you want it to invest in you, if that makes sense. Again, that website is mygoldenyearsroadmap.com. And, of course, that phone number, 702-996-4050, 702-996-4050. And again, that website, mygoldenyearsroadmap.com. Well, if you plan to retire in 2026, do you know that you're already in a critical zone for, making your decisions that could decide how comfortable you're going to be in retirement? This year brings us lingering inflation, changing tax laws, and, of course, rising Medicare costs. So what financial moves should someone make right now so that they can avoid, costly mistakes later?
Well, I think it really depends on how old you are and how well prepared you are. The closer we are to retirement, there's definitely certain strategies that ought to be implemented, safety-oriented strategies. I've talked often on this show about what I call the two-pocket approach, which is, having some money in the market, some money out of the market, because if we have downturns right before retirement or right after retirement when we're reaching into our retirement accounts to fund our lifestyle, well, that can have devastating consequences when we're reaching into a declining portfolio. I'd say from a tax planning standpoint, the sooner people start talking to us, the better, because if we can get 5, preferably a 10-year run-up to retirement, then we can do a lot of things to help them retire with less tax, in some cases even literally tax-free, legally being the key term on that. And again, that's one of the things we talk about in that 6-hour class that we've often promoted here on the radio. Healthcare issues, those have got to be discussed, and the sooner you do that, the less expensive the solutions are. So I'd say healthcare and taxes are the big ones, but certainly safety from a volatility standpoint. We've got to start thinking differently. What it takes to ascend the mountain, preparing for retirement versus coming down that mountain safely are two different things. And where you really need the guide is coming down the mountain to make it be safe. So come visit with us. We offer these complimentary consultations. My team members and I can help. We've got lots of experience, and there's no question that we can make some dramatic improvements in the vast majority of people's situation.
Real quick, Mark, I just want to make sure that all of our listeners kind of have a little feel of who you are. Why are you doing this for strangers? Why do you care if I have enough to retire or Betty Sue has enough to retire? What makes you passionate about doing what you do on the daily basis?
I think there's a number of things that influenced my decision to come into this business. I've talked before about how, I was accepted to law school, and, I kind of figured that was the only thing you do when you're a straight-A student kind of thing. But I really realized the more I talked to people that wasn't going to be as fulfilling. I really wanted something more service-oriented. My father was a military chaplain. I had been a missionary myself, and really wanted to do something that would have meaning to people. And one of the powerful things to me as I was going through my college experience was watching my grandparents, because I had 2 sets of grandparents whose financial experience was entirely opposite. One was very well-to-do, the other not. And just seeing the implications of that, particularly when it came to their caregiving, to me it was a question of dignity. And I get a little worked up sometimes, so I shouldn't probably talk about family members like that, because I get a little worked up thinking about this. It's really a matter of dignity. And at the end of the day, I think I know for a fact I have far more influence in people's day-to-day lives, their happiness and their dignity again, their estate planning for their family, their loved ones, all the non-financial things that are most important in life. I have far more influence there than I think I ever could have had I practiced law. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to help people in the way we do. We consider it a sacred duty. Most people trade their time for the money that they earn, and what they're able to keep of that to care for themselves in later years when they can't work is really critical. We've got to keep that money safe, because most people can't go back to work once they've retired. It's much easier to retire than it is to re-enter the workforce. And since so many people retire for reasons beyond their control, we've really got to make sure that they're well prepared. So the sooner people meet with us, the better. I just love what I do there. I get to see the light bulbs come on in people's eyes in that very first appointment when they start seeing opportunities. I get to encourage people to actually go out and live more than they thought was possible. And in some cases, I'm able to prevent them from some really, really bad mistakes, where people are wanting to retire before they're remotely ready. That's very meaningful to me. I mean, that's a type of service that I don't know that I can do anywhere else with as much impact. So yeah, I love what I do, and we welcome people to come visit with us.
Investment advisory service is offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.